Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Welcome back to the podcast. This episode, we are going to sort of marginally connect to what we were talking about in a prior episode. I believe the last episode, when we were talking about building confidence. I think it has to do with a tiny piece of what we're going to talk about this time.
Yeah.
Which is observing children to understand when they're not doing something because they have a deficit related to doing the skill, or when they're not doing something that would be more of a performance deficit. And I want to start out by acknowledging that sometimes I have seen these two things defined in a way that interconnects them differently than how I learned it.
Yeah.
I have looked up performance deficit and seen the definition being someone who doesn't do something because they don't have the skill. I, however, learned that these are two different things. And as an early educator, I think it benefits me when I'm observing children and what they're doing to think of it as two different things. Because one of the things, right? Two things. Because one of the things that we want to figure out is, why is the child doing it or not doing it, right? Does this child need support in the skill, or is there another reason? So the way I learned it was that a skill deficit is the child doesn't have this skill. The child still needs to be introduced again to a skill, practice a skill, has not mastered this skill.
Yeah.
A performance deficit, on the other hand, I learned was the child could potentially do this skill, has learned this skill. The skill has become a part of the repertoire of what this child can do, but for some reason is not performing it, which can be a variety of things, including what we said in the prior episode about lack of confidence. But we're not going to reiterate all that. We're going to go to other reasons why a child might not perform a skill that they have.
Right. And I think
so
as an
you had
educator,
a couple of good examples of this.
Yeah, because I think as an educator, knowing the difference will tell you how to approach the child's learning, right? So like in my case, in my class, I have students who are from a different culture, and culturally in their households, their parents do a lot of things for their children. You know, the independence is not really built at home. Mm-hmm. Yes. So they get to school and they're like, hey, my daddy does that for me, you know, like, and they are capable of doing the skill, but don't, because they are not necessarily expected to do that skill at their house, you know, and then they come to school and I'm like, no, but it's expected here. So let's try to do it here, you know? And, it's not even I don't even think it's a confidence issue sometimes for them. It's just like, no, I just don't do that. You know, in my house, we don't do that. Or I think sometimes it could lead into the confidence of like, they're not building that confidence in the skill at home, you know, so they're not necessarily like, I don't know, somebody always just does it for me. You know, maybe I'm not supposed to do it. Maybe I'm not supposed to have that skill, you know? So I think there's that. And I think for me, like, as the teacher, that's a different approach for me. For me, that's like, I need to build their confidence that this is what we can do it at school, you know? And I've had discussions with some of the children like, okay, then let your daddy do that for you at home. But when you're at school, let's try to do it here so that you can do it on your own at school, you know? But that's a different approach. If the person just didn't know how to do the skill, now I might be doing something totally different in technique, you know, to assess that, like, why don't we have that skill?
You said a lot. So I think there's one of the main differences between, for me anyway, one of the main differences between a skill deficit and a performance deficit is that if there's a skill deficit, the child's not going to be able to do it anywhere.
Right.
The child doesn't have the skill, right?
Right.
If there's a performance deficit, there's a difference in how and where the child's displaying a skill they have. And it's culturally respectful
Yes.
when children come from interdependent cultures where families tend to do more for them, because being independent at this age is not one of their priorities. Their priority is to
Right.
teach children to help and depend on the community. So of course
Yes.
they're going to teach
Yes.
their child to accept their help. And it's just not a priority. So
Yeah.
where a skill, if you don't have the skill, you're not doing it anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
not performing it somewhere, you can learn, children can learn, this is something I perform in this situation, but not this situation. It is
Right.
culturally respectful to say, okay, so let your father do that for you at home. In school, a different performance is expected. In
Yes.
school, we're going to ask you to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And as we have said many times on this podcast, children do different things in different places. They learn different expectations for different places. I also think performance deficit, as far as expectations, can work for or against a child different, like aside from culture, not just culture. So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, we're in a classroom and for some reason we want the children to jump around and yell. It's been, I don't know, raining for a whole week, as it did here not so long
That's
before
so
we were
true.
recording this.
Yes.
It was raining for a whole week, and these children need to get energy out, and
Yeah.
we are in our classroom, but we're going to shut the door, and there aren't that many people around right now. We're just going to let this energy out. And so the children are being asked to perform in a way that's ordinarily only done in the gym or the playground. And we say to them, okay, let's get our sillies out. And we start jumping around and yelling and modeling it for them. And some children do it, and some children stand back and just watch, because they're thinking, I don't know, is that allowed here? Sometimes we will see performance deficit when children are uncertain if a certain kind of behavior is actually appropriate for the setting.
Yeah. I think
And
that's very
sometimes
true.
they just need
Yeah.
some reassurance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
It's
not
okay.
sure, for 3 years and 11 months of my life, you have told me not to do that indoors.
And now all of a sudden it rains
now-
for a week. And we need to run.
And I'm the sort of personality who's very concerned with doing the right thing.
Right.
And because I'm very concerned with doing the right thing all the time, I'm just thinking this is strange and not allowed in here, and I'm not quite sure what to do with myself. That can
Yes.
cause a performance deficit.
Yeah. I think also maybe a performance deficit, because I see this with my students sometimes, is they're really, really unsure of the answers, right? So like if you're in meeting time and you're doing your question of the day kind of thing, and I always try to put a question of the day that there is no wrong answer, but they're so unsure. They've never been in school before. This is their first experience at school. Here we are in month 1 and you're asking me a question. I don't really know what the answer is. And I'm trying to show them there is no wrong answer. Do you like to paint? Yes or no? No wrong answer. Just answer it, but they're so unsure of it. So they're like, they're like, I'd rather not answer the question today, because they're so worried about it being wrong. I think that's what's going on. I'm not even fully sure, but I think that can cause a performance anxiety kind of thing, a performance deficit of I'm just not sure if this is the right answer. So let me just not perform it at all, whereas they have the skill to do it.
So
but they're just
anxiety can cause it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're saying anxiety can cause it. I want to give an adult example of anxiety causing a performance deficit.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about how we might approach these two different things.
Yeah.
When something is on my mind, whether it's frustrating me or it's causing me anxiety or whatever it is, I am less apt to get a good night's sleep. So I have the skill of sleeping. I know how to get myself to sleep. I can totally do that. I've got the skill. But my frustration or anxiety or other big emotions are keeping me up at night. That's a performance deficit.
Right. Okay. That's a good example.
Here's another one, grown-ups.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have the skill. Okay, so here, and here's another adult example. I have the skill set to be able to walk on my treadmill, but I am procrastinating because I don't particularly enjoy it.
I don't enjoy it. This is like, I was just thinking of the example of like, I have the ability to clean my house, but I'm not going to because I'd rather do other things. So, I know how to clean. I know how to vacuum.
Like, I have the ability,
but not, but not the.
But I'm not
desire.
Performing that. Yes. And sometimes children are the same, right? They have the ability to do something, and they either don't enjoy it, don't feel like it.
Right.
Just it's not what they want to do today. They prefer something else, and so they don't perform it. I think it's very, very important to really be deeply thinking about when we're observing children who are not doing something for some reason. Is this something where I need to support the skill, or is this something where I need to support the performance in some way? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes when the child is like, you can just tell this child is just not wanting to do this. It's okay to let the performance go that day.
Yeah.
And let them exhibit the skill another day. It's not,
yes.
We act like every day does matter. I want to phrase this properly. Every day does matter. Every day gives us the opportunity to work with and teach young children. Every single day matters. At the same time, there are moments where I just have to admit this child is not up for this today, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
You don't want to come over to my you don't want to come over to my table and do math today?
Okay, we'll do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I also think sometimes with some of these students, especially the ones that have like a lot of anxiety or a lot of stuff going on, like maybe outside of school, giving them that pass one day goes a long way with them, and because they're like, oh wow, she understands me and she's helping me and she's understanding that I just don't want to do math. I just need alone time in the cozy corner today. And she's understanding that she's not forcing me. She's not making me, and then the next day you might find like, hey, I want to do math today. You gave me a pass yesterday. Thank you. But now today I'm going to do it. I think that goes a long way with some of these students. It shows that you care and I give them this example, like, listen, there's some days I don't want to come to school either, but I come and I try my best, and there's some days, hey, we forgot to do small groups because I didn't feel like doing it, or something, or something else happened. Like, you have to be a little bit flexible, because we're human beings, like I shouldn't be saying, well, I don't care that you cried on the way to school today. We're doing math anyway, because we have tomorrow. We have the next 365 days to do this. You know what I mean? Like, it'll come around. You'll get there eventually.
And, performance deficit is a behavior, which means we can track it like every other behavior. So we can document the date, the time, the antecedent, what was happening just before, what performance thing did we not see, which is the behavior, and then the consequence, which is what is the reaction of everyone around this child. So if we document all that, you might see certain patterns. You might see this child is willing to perform this skill while doing this sort of activity, but not this sort of activity. You might notice this child is willing to perform this skill in the morning, but not the afternoon. Right. You might notice a variety of things. Mm-hmm.
Right. Or like if your goal is like you want to do a math activity, and they didn't want to come to the table to do math in the small group or whatever, then try to get them while they're playing. Hey, we can do this skill while playing, and I could see if he knows it without forcing them to sit at the table and do it. You can like attack the problem from a different angle and see if you can get the same results.
Right. Like, let's say a child who really loves dramatic play is far more apt to do some math that's related to their dramatic play than to come to a table with me and show me the skills that they have to do math. That means that I, as the teacher, if I know that, I can make sure that when that child is pretending in dramatic play, that I bring some sort of math activity into it
Yes.
so that we can
Yes.
continue to build that child's skills. Because if the child comes to the table with me and won't display those skills, then how do I build on it? How do I scaffold? I can't. You're not even showing me what you already can do. Scaffolding, remember, is building upon what they already can do. If you're not going to show me what you already can do, I can't build on it. But if you're going to show me what you already can do when you're in dramatic play, then potentially I can build on it over there.
Right.
So I think it helps us to know, again, how to individualize our instruction. And I highly encourage everyone who's listening to this, when you think the child has the skill, and I've done this sometimes as a teacher, I thought, I saw this child do this 5 times while playing with blocks, but is not doing it during small group time.
Right.
That's something that I want to document, pay attention to, and plan intentionally based on.
Yes.
Because if the child will not come to small group and do this with me in the way that I want them to, then I have to figure out how to go to them. These are very young children. This is not a high school class where they're sitting in rows of desks expected to just do everything according to this schedule that we all have. These are very young children, and they're just not going to do that. And I think, I could be wrong here, but I think as the children get older, we see more performance deficits, as children related to particular behaviors or disabilities or special needs as children get older. But when children are younger, it can be very much based in just, I like doing this and not that.
Right.
Because they're so egocentric.
Right. So
I think it's very, very important for everyone to think about.
You kind of had to meet them where they are at and where they enjoy being. If your students are always, I have a few students that will always, always, always choose art during free choice. Always, will not choose anywhere else. Okay, so I meet them there. That's where I go. All right, we're going to practice this while doing art. Because I know I can get their attention there, and I know they're going to enjoy it. And now I just took something they loved and made it a learning activity, and they didn't even realize they were learning. You know what I mean? And they kind of realized, like, oh, I could do this in art. I can do all these things in art, and I could do all this. There's some students I have, they love blocks. I will go to the block area and do it there. It's very individualized. We're getting the same skills. We're just using what they're interested in to do it, which is what we should be doing, I think.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
And we do 100% have to meet them where they are. We've always said that. It's one of the cornerstones of early education is meet the child where they are. It really should be one of the cornerstones of all education, but
all education, but it's
necessarily
not.
so.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I hope that you will think about when you're working with children, is this actually a skill deficit or is this a performance deficit for some reason? And again, I want to go back to what you said toward the beginning. If this is cultural, they can learn to perform different ways in different places. And we always are going to respect different cultures. That's how we partner with families, and that's how we teach children acceptance of everyone. So I'm not critiquing families. If I've even had children say things to me like, why can't I wrestle here? I wrestle with we're allowed to wrestle at home. I wrestle with my brother or my sister at home. I wrestle with my parents at home, and it's allowed at home. And I've said to them, well, maybe wrestling is okay for home and you can do that at home, but we can't do that here. Too many people can get hurt. That's even, having to do with the difference in culture, because that's family culture. Some families allow that sort of physical activity at home while others don't. And I can tell you, as the mother of who are 2 men now, when they were boys, it was tough restricting that wrestling because it just was. And I get that children could even be told not to wrestle at home and come in and say, I'm allowed to wrestle at home, when that's not really the case. So that's entirely possible. keep an eye out, preschool peeps. Keep an eye out. Is this actually a skill that I need to practice more with this child, or is this something impeding the performance of a skill the child has? So I encourage you to think about that. And we're going to think about something else together right now. Let's think about this. Let's think about Patreon. On Patreon, we have some blog articles we've written. We have additional content. We have ways for you to connect with other preschool peeps around the world. And it provides us with a way to continue to improve this podcast and add on to what we would do. We would love to be able to do more for you. We would love to be able to do something like record these things in a studio together. We would love to be able to do this, but it costs money and no can do. So please do that. I'm sure you can also relate to the fact that just like all prices go up, so does the cost of producing this podcast. So we appreciate your support as patrons. It keeps us going, absolutely keeps us going. And, buy yourself the gift of, as you're buying gifts for other people, buy yourself the gift of membership in our Patreon. It's patreon.com/how preschool teachers do it. It's how you should find it. Otherwise, just go to patreon.com and search for us. Finally, we're going to shout out two new places who've been listening where there are preschool peeps, right? Yay.
Yeah.
We always start with the country. So let's start with the country. This week in our top 3, Egypt.
That's so
hello. Right? Hello, our preschool peeps in Egypt. And in the United States, I think for the first time in our top numbers is the state of Michigan.
Oh. Hello,
Does that
Michigan.
sound right? Is it like our first time?
It's the first time we've
highlighted
Michigan. Yes.
Okay. So people in Egypt and people in Michigan, you've gotten your shout out, but that doesn't mean your work is done. Go get more preschool peeps. Tell them to listen to us. We love the fact that our statistics still are climbing. So thank you all very, very much. And we will catch you next time on How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast. Bye, peeps.
Yay, bye, peeps.